this week we're going to be talking about farming books and how you can perhaps have a look at a book and find out why some people have got intuitive decisions and why some people don't. And one of the neat things is that this book, which is a New Zealand book, is selling worldwide. People are talking about a lot of things in the rural sector this week, including, of course, the fact that Synlay's announced a $34 or $35 million profit, and that's after tax. $465,000 to help the situation as far as the Manawatu and Whanganui is concerned. They want to do more development work. Kiwi fruit industries to be restructured, and the good news is that kiwi fruit and China are now talking again, and those sales are back up to where they were before that slight problem with a fungus. Havelock North wine sales have rocketed as the Campylobacter troubles keep on happening, and a royal event for the Christchurch show. It's going to be beef that's going to be underneath the spotlight. And phase 1 of the broadband extension into Canterbury has been done. In just a moment, we're going to be talking horticulture with Jim Grease. Jim, the season's gone from one extreme to the other.
As they do, Rob. We were talking earlier on about maybe the season's going to be a little early because it was quite a warm winter. The winter has still been warm if you have a look at it across the whole board of it, but we've still got a bit of it to go, and we've had these recent really good frosts. -9 degrees in the mid-Canterbury region last week, -7 degrees. There's some cracking frost there and good cooling temperatures. And what's actually happening, what would normally be starting to move in horticulture, such as apricots and peaches, in terms of bud movement, black currants, early apples, in the Nelson and Hawke's Bay region, they're not. They're actually staying in bed, as we call it in the industry. And that's a sign that maybe the season's going to be a few days later. But what normally does happen, when all of a sudden the spring does come, you could sort of turn around on a Monday and think, oh yeah, things are pretty much closed up, I'll wait and do my spraying another week's time. You go back on the Thursday and things are really getting moving. So what I'd be suggesting to growers throughout New Zealand over the next 3 weeks, be pretty diligent and look over your crops on a regular basis, especially all those early varieties, whatever they may be.
Have you had enough chill? Because you have complained we're not getting enough chill.
No, we haven't had enough chill, but we can't do anything about it, but no, we haven't had what we would prefer to have, which is around 1,500–1,700 hours. We're still languishing around the 1,100 hours, 1,200 hours. We've got 3 weeks of August or 2 weeks of August to go yet. We normally get our coldest weather in this next fortnight on a traditional basis. There's a lot of snow up in the refrigerator, which is good. That'll create a few more frosts. These clear, nice days are good. They are drying the ground out, though.
I was going to ask you about moisture, because frost will dry the ground out pretty fast.
Frost drawing that first sort of few centimetres is very dry. So the vegetable growers are working their paddocks not too hard. I mean, we've had some good spring rains too. Well, it's good lately some good rains, and the vegetable growers have gone on almost virtually the next day because the soil was dry, just enough moisture there to kick the seeds away. So interesting season from the beginning of it.
So it doesn't matter if there's frosts when you're planting, because it will strike, won't it?
Yes, it will strike. Yeah, one of the biggest problems we've got when you're planting seeds, especially vegetables, these days, is that you actually plant them, get them going, they just start to move, and then we get a good shower of rain, probably say anything up to about 20 mils, and it caps that soil. And what we mean by capping it, it makes the top centimetre or two quite hard when it dries out. So then the actual plant can't get its way through there, the seedling can't break its way through there, and they've got to put a material on which is one that breaks down the soil again to allow the actual seed to emerge.
Yeah, but it's
an
uphill battle for them, isn't it?
It is, and I can see that sort of thing happening a little bit this year because the weather's so variable at the moment.
Soil temperatures won't be doing much either, I wouldn't have thought.
No, well, I mean, they haven't been critical, but they are low. They're in the single figures, and that's what they should be. They'll start to move fairly soon, especially the temperate silt loams and the sandy loams. They'll start to move reasonably quickly, I would think, and by early to mid-September we should be starting to hit some double figures, I would imagine, if we aren't already going to do that a little bit earlier. It all depends what the next fortnight's going to be like in August, because as I say, traditionally we do get some quite foul weather at that stage. But the other thing we've got to be very careful of, because of the warm winter we have had, I've been finding scale and apple orchards and apricot guys down in Central Otago. We're finding scale, we've been finding a little bit of aphid. There's a little the parent, the adult mites are starting to move a little bit. So there's a bit of livestock out there that we need to deal with. Probably as soon as they do start to get into breaking bud and what we call, in most fruit crops anyway, it's called green tip. The green tip comes and then it bursts into a little bit of leaf. That's when you get in there with your insecticide, your chlorpyrifos's and a bit of oil, and that'll get rid of those beasts. And you probably won't see any of them for the rest of the season, which is good. So
Which
you
would
get
be
them
really
early.
nice.
Yeah, it is really good. Yeah.
Now, copper's already been done. You're not using copper to
Oh,
battle
well,
these sort of
we'll
things?
do another. I mean, all the stone fruit guys will do 3, and they'll be due to do their 3rd any time now, actually, before bud break or before the buds start to burst out. But in terms of vegetable production, we're still putting on coppers on there, and of course we'll put on coppers on apples and pears, and also all berry fruit over the next sort of fortnight or so. And don't forget the roses at home. It's a good idea to get them done too.
Well, they should be pruned by now.
They should
I
be
guess.
pruned by now, and you should be.
Mine will be done by 2 o'clock.
Oh, good man. And you should be looking at doing your 2nd application of copper on your roses at home, probably in about 10 days' time.
That's good. Tell me how the conference went, the blackcurrant.
Yeah, we had a blackcurrant conference, industry dinner on the Thursday night, and then a conference in Nelson. It was really good, very enjoyable. A good crowd turned up, and the growers, we learned about our trial work we're doing in Tasmania regarding clearwing, because we can't bring that budwood into New Zealand, so we're actually conducting New Zealand trials in Tasmania in conjunction with the Tasmanian government and grower. And that's going particularly well. So we're not losing the time, but because they're very similar to our conditions, we're not losing the time. But at some stage, we would love to be able to bring back our own wood for our breeding program.
That was our wood.
That was actually, that's come out of Poland and Scotland, and we had it here in Auckland, and we couldn't get it through quarantine, so they sent it to Australia. Australians are quite happy to take it in.
You got away with that.
Got away with that, and we started the trial work. It's in its 3rd year now, and it's progressing very well. Clearwing is one of the animals, as I say, the livestock in blackcurrants that causes huge amount of devastation around the world. And unfortunately, if there's one beast that we do lead in, it's the clearwing. So these trials are very important to try and get resistant plants for.
So you're working on resistance rather than spray.
Absolutely resistance here, nothing to do with spray. Yep.
So that's very careful manipulation of.
Yes, that's plant breeding. It's not GMO. People think that it's actually hybrids and crossing, and you know this program. It's been going in Poland now for about 8 years, in Scotland for a similar time, I believe, and we'll probably do another 5 to 8 years here before we see the results of it. So we could be looking 2016 before we actually see any physical results with resistant blackcurrant bushes out there.
First one that gets past the winning post, though, is going to make a lot of money.
Absolutely, they are. Yeah, and of course it's got to be suitable for our conditions and also for some areas on the continent too. So yeah, you're right. And now we've got very good. We are the 3rd biggest blackcurrant breeders in the world. So hopefully we'll crack the duck.
So the race is on.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And very briefly, the vineyard industry.
Vineyards are looking good. They're well and truly pruned up. The guys are waiting for the buds to break, as it were, and that won't be too far away. But there's a little bit of pruning still to do. And at this time of the year, with some of the varieties that are susceptible to frost, the actual growers will actually prune them late, so they break a little later to prevent maybe some frost damage. So there's a bit of strategic pruning going on at the moment. But no, the wine industry itself is in very healthy shape, and I'm pleased to hear that Hawke's Bay is drinking a lot more rather than their water.
Well, I think it's a lot safer, quite frankly. Jeff, thank you very much indeed. In just a moment, we find out how New Zealand, in fact Lincoln University, is helping farmers around the world to make their decisions. You've come up with an interesting angle about farm management.
Yes, I guess so, yes. Well, the world runs on intuition. People make most decisions on intuition. And of course, some farmers are very good intuitive people. They, without keeping full records, without doing lots of sums and budgets, they do achieve wonderful results in their farms. And that's because they have good intuition. Then there are many others who aren't so good at that. And I know one of the researchers talks about the 2-week rule. A lot of farmers do the right thing, but some do it 2 weeks too late, and the result is very late. oncoming there. So intuition is very important, so we need to work out how to improve farmers' intuition.
How do you go about getting that across in a book?
Well, the book is a story of a group of farmers, 2 or 3 mainly, plus some researchers, and their activity reported in the book was to conduct a 5-year research program on working out how to improve farmers' intuition, and then record the results of that. And it was pretty favourable, really. You'll need to read the book to discover how.
So what have you done to actually create this scenario?
Yes, the book goes through chapter by chapter or the main decision problems faced by farmers, and each farmer talks about how he's made his decisions and what's happened, and the group critique that with help of some professional advisors, and through that they pick up their intuitive decision-making skills, and that seems to work pretty well, really.
Are people becoming more intuitive because of the book?
Well, I would certainly hope so. The book has only just come out this year, so I think it'll take a bit longer before the worldwide impact will really take effect, but it will.
It is worldwide.
That book's published in 5M Publishing in Britain, but it's throughout the US and Australia and New Zealand.
What's the uptake been like? Has it been good?
So far it has, yes. Yes, it's been on some of the better selling lists in the US, for example, which is surprising really about New Zealand farming stories. Sheep farming mainly and cropping farming. So yeah, it's good.
It's not your first book.
No. Been a number of others, mainly textbooks, the other ones. The one this year we've also put out is about the history of a group of people that set up computer systems for use by farmers throughout mainly Australasia, but there were some in Britain too using the systems developed. So there's a book about the history of that, which group of people that made quite a big difference up and down New Zealand and started the use of computers by farmers.
Computers have certainly come a long way.
Yes, they have. Of course, when we first started, we started in 1980, when the Kellogg Foundation gave us a couple of $1 million to do this, and which then became self-supporting through the sale of the systems. Microcomputers didn't exist, of course. We were going to do all this on a mainframe computers, and people would post in details and we would analyse that and send them results back through the mail. And we experimented with that and did a few of those small systems. But just about that time, fortunately, the microcomputer turned up. But I remember when we bought our first microcomputer, it was equivalent to today's value of about $30,000. And of course it doesn't do nearly as much as your little phone in your hand now. So things have changed dramatically. But what hasn't changed dramatically, interesting, is the real use of these machines by farmers. There's a long, long way to go to develop better systems. Yeah.
And you're still working on that?
Well, we are. Not directly so much, but we're working on research that's leading to systems that might be used. Most farmers use computers now, still, and did then, and still now, for financial recording and paddock details and records, and GST returns and tax returns and budgeting and all those sorts of things. And yet we've just been talking about farmers making intuitive decisions every day. There is no computer systems that really helps them do that. A farmer every day is making myriads of decisions. He's deciding to move this group of animals or not, whether to put on some urea or to spray today or tomorrow. There's myriads of these little decisions that he makes that there's no assistance for. And things like diseases, that's starting. You could now take a picture of your wheat plant that's looking pretty miserable and send it off, and you can get a diagnosis of what that might be. So that's the sort of thing that's going to evolve and start and do a lot more. And precision agriculture too, of course, is all computer-based.
It's been a very exciting ride, hasn't it, for the last 40 years?
Oh yes, we talked about that, didn't we? There's incredibly, we've seen more change in our lifetime than any previous generation in terms of, well, when you and I started working in these sorts of areas, of course people sat down, they were lucky to have a calculator, a mechanical calculator, and they would do a budget of what they were going to do, or a valuation of the farm, or something similar there, all by hand, or perhaps with a little calculator. And yes, it's dramatic, the change. And I remember as a researcher too, you see, if you wanted a copy of some research that someone had done in England or somewhere, because it came out in journals in our library here and they'd appear there, if you wanted a copy, you got an aerogram and you wrote a little note to this fellow in deepest Scotland or somewhere, and that would go and come back, and eventually you might get a reprint of this thing if you were very lucky, sort of 6 months later. But now, of course, we sit at our computer and we can access any journal anywhere in the world and get what some research has done instantly on our desk. So dramatic changes.
Isn't it lovely to have people being able to write so successfully? After the break, we're talking to Warwick Green from Seed Force, and we're going to be looking more at trees that you should be planting.
Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Maybe your family has been farming the land for 5 generations. Perhaps you have invented the next best thing in agriculture, or maybe something else. Whatever your story, if you're out on the land, we want to hear from you. Get in touch by emailing us at info@ontheland.co.nz.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things, make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Warwick, it's a bit dry out there. The frosts are taking most of the moisture off the top.
Well, they have, Rob, but I'd have to say it's probably been one of the mildest winters, and obviously a lot of people are talking about climate change and things like that, but the reality is that we probably haven't had enough moisture during the winter to offset what is likely to be, a shortage of water, especially in wells, because they're down certainly in Canterbury, and so that makes it more important in the spring that we try and, when we're planning to plant, that we're conserving moisture and that we're planting early and making all the right decisions to make sure that we maximise what we've got, really.
Yeah, so how do you prepare the soil?
Well, I think, spring's a pretty important time for planting of, in some areas, certainly further south, it's the main sowing season for pastures. And obviously across the country it's the main sowing season for brassicas for next year's winter feed, and it's a key time obviously for the new crop, fodder wheat. So people are planting that as well. You can't get away from the age-old adage of ensuring that you have a reasonable fallow of some description to try and conserve moisture. Right. So whether you're going through using direct drilling systems or you're using traditional cultivation, you really want to go through and have a prepare in time to make sure you've got some form of conservation of what moisture you've got, and prepare the seed bed so that obviously when you plant the seeds, whatever they might be, they get that up and away and get a chance to germinate reasonably quickly.
So your Cambridge roller comes into its own.
Well, yes, all your various equipment, Rob, and I mean, some species can be direct drilled quite successfully, others can't, and so there's a real mix and match of what, just depending on individual farmers' circumstances, what they're going to use. But I think it's pretty key that we try and certainly conserve moisture. Conditions are good in terms of getting ground prepared and ready, so there's no concerns there at this point in time. Certainly in the Canterbury region, I know they've had quite a lot of rain up in the North Island, and probably certainly down south it's a wee bit wetter too. But in the region of Canterbury, it is pretty good at the moment.
Now you mentioned fodder beet. Any shortage of seed, or you're okay there?
Look, seed supplies are coming in. I think the main issue that we face is obviously we've got to make sure that there's no more velvet leaf comes into the country. So that's meant that MPI have put in place a pretty rigorous testing process. So when at the point of entry, biosecurity have taken care of basically testing every seed lot and making sure that seed coming in is clear. So that's a process that's going to slow things down, Rob. I mean, it's not like it used to be in terms of they have to take samples, send seed away to the official laboratories, get it tested, analysed, and then they'll think about releasing the shipment. So it's I think for farmers, because there is quite a lot of seed that's coming fresh from the European harvest that has just been, the time frame of availability is condensed even more than what it was in the past. So farmers need to be planning, and they need to be making sure that if they're wanting to plant fodder beet, that they get their order into their retailers as soon as possible. So at least they know where they stand. As to whether there'll be a shortage or not, I think it largely will depend on how MPI handle the process, because we've got to have the stuff in the ground by sort of end of November, early December. So it's just that handling the overall biosecurity logistics, really.
Has the industry, as in the growers, got on top with this velvet leaf?
Well, it's been obviously MPI working with federated farmers, working with individual farmers. There's been a lot of meetings around the country, around the affected areas. It's not something that's going to go away. We've got it here now. It's a matter of monitoring and a matter of all the paddocks and farms have been identified, and obviously stock movements on those properties have been contained. So it's going to be a process of really monitoring and making sure that we don't allow this bloom and weed to sort of expand further. Really.
Some very serious rogan.
Oh, sure, yes. And I mean, if it gets into the broadacre arable cropping zone in mid-Canterbury, for example, I mean, in a broad scale, it will have some devastating consequences.
Let's go to Lucerne, because Lucerne, I know it's one of your favourites with Force 4, but it is for a reason.
Well, in terms of Lucerne, I mean, Force 4's been fantastic. It's a great variety, and it's really leading the charge out there. There's good seed supplies, so there's no shortage there. But in terms of just Lucerne generally, big upswing in interest in using it, mainly from the point of view of just its ability to tolerate pretty extremes of climate, but also it's a phenomenal feed for finishing animals, and I think the likes of Doug Avery up in Marlborough has done a tremendous job in terms of demonstrating what the value of Lucerne is in some of the harder country and what he's been able to achieve in terms of profitability on his farm. So I think you're seeing this upswing across the country now and people wanting to use Lucerne. So there's good supplies. Make sure you select your fields carefully, make sure you've done a soil test, you've got your pH right, and again, do a bit of planning. But it's a plant that will survive for many years, Rob, and give you good, faithful production year in, year out.
Because seriously, I can't understand why people with a 28 block don't put lucerne in, because small bales are gold for the equine industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's really good money in that. I think you're bang on. I mean, $20 a bale, for example, for really top quality lucerne hay in small bales is not unheard of. So
and you're getting 5 or 6 cuts once it's established.
Yes, five or six cuts. Yes, during your first cut would normally be sort of late November. Then basically 30 days from then on through summer and into early autumn. Yep. So pretty good.
Absolutely.
So I think this interest will continue. Yep.
That's good. And very briefly, grasses.
Well, obviously further south we go, and even in parts of the other parts of the South Island and the North Island, spring planting is the traditional time for planting their permanent pastures down. So obviously, ryegrass is obviously the predominant species sown, but I think we're seeing now farmers starting to want to look at, and they're picking up on this resilient pasture approach, whereby they want to look at other species and integrating them either into their pasture mix. I'm talking about Coxford. Some of the new Coxfords are just top of this world, and also looking at alternative species like tall fescue and trying to use those as alternatives. So if you're going to plant a permanent pasture, I think seek some advice, and seek some advice that gives you both the agronomy and the fertility side of things, so you know exactly what you're doing before you start. So,
Warwick, thank you very much indeed.
Cheers.
A great font of information is Warwick Green. Just a moment though, we're going to be looking at trees in our 3-part series about what you should be planting. You should have planted it 20 years ago, but next week is still fine. Anna, is there any reason why we shouldn't go out and plant fruit trees in the corner of a paddock?
No, I mean, it should be encouraged. The only considerations would be, is there enough shelter for your fruit trees? If you're going to start an orchard, you need to have shelter. If you don't have adequate shelter, you risk losing a lot of your blossom in spring. And if it's that windy, then it makes it a lot harder for bees to come along and pollinate as well, which will affect your fruit, lack of fruit.
So I guess the sort of the home paddocks, the ones that are close to the homestead, is where you would put them into corners and things.
Yeah, I mean, they can be further away, but you have to have the shelter. And then you also need to consider your soil. If you're going to plant fruit trees, they need a lot of nutrients in that. You've got to have a good fertile soil. But you can start an orchard anywhere. You can start it in a sand dune. You just have to dig deep holes, put lots of compost in, make sure you've got some irrigation up and going to get them through the summers.
Oh,
and I was going to say, and being fruit trees and that, you do need to keep up a spray regime.
That's what I was going to ask you. Because people would be put off by that. They'd think, oh, it's all too hard, I've got to keep spraying them.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are certain varieties in the way of, like your apples, which are more disease resistant than others. But in general, and especially with your stone fruits, like your apricots, peaches, nectarines, they do need a regular spray program. And that includes spraying them with copper.
So copper seems to be the magical answer though, because everybody sort of says just spray them with copper.
Oh, that definitely helps. It definitely keeps the diseases away. But it's just a matter of doing it at the right times of the year. So spraying in winter, spraying in spring, but not when the bees are around.
The lovely thing, of course, is that they produce. So you do get something off from the trees.
Oh, definitely. It's nothing better than being able to eat your own fruit off your own trees, ones that you've grown yourself. It's very satisfying.
People seem to be heading towards nut trees as well as fruit trees.
Definitely. In a lot of cases, you do need a bit more room. You do need shelter, once again.
The shelter keeps coming up, doesn't it?
It does.
So get your shelter belts planted first. And
Definitely.
Then once
Yeah.
you've got that, then you can plant your orchard or your
You can
nuts.
start an orchard without the shelter, but you could be very disappointed for a while until your shelter gets up and starts protecting your fruit trees.
Plan in advance.
Exactly.
And after the break, we're going to be talking about IRD and farm accounting with Kerry Adams from DAA.
Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Maybe your family has been farming the land for 5 generations. Perhaps you have invented the next best thing in agriculture, or maybe something else. Whatever your story, if you're out on the land, we want to hear from you. Get in touch by emailing us at info@ontheland.co.nz.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things, make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Kerry, IRD and 90-day trials.
Yeah, well, we just had a case come out of the Employment Relations Authority about 90-day trial periods, and basically they've said this is a heads up for employers to get their documentation in order. We had a beekeeping business, and they wanted a staff member, so they found a guy on his first day of work, turned up. They gave him some documents, sent him home for the afternoon and said have a read and come back. Those documents didn't have his name, his pay, his hours or anything like that, even nowhere for him to even sign. He started working on the job, and because he was a bit of a no-hoper in the long run, he killed off some beehives, etc. They terminated him. Now he thought that was unjustified, so took a case, and the employers tried to argue, well, look, he was on a 90-day trial period, so we had full rights to get rid of him because he wasn't performing. The Employment Relations Authority said no, you didn't actually have all your documentation in order. There are some strict requirements. So they tried to argue that he was on probation, and again didn't have anything in order. So they basically lost the case. The Employment Relations Authority did actually concede a little bit in terms of the employer by saying, look, you know, he didn't perform, he wasn't up to the job, so cut his payout by half. And so,
But it was a payout.
yeah, he got lost wages, and he also got some compensation for the loss of dignity and humiliation, basically.
So I'm not going to take sides, but you've got to be apolitical here, Kerry. But seriously, I mean, and that's how tricky it is now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you've got to make sure that before they start, you give them a document that has all their details, and especially the clause in there about 90 days. They've got to agree to it. You can't give it on the day they start. It's got to be in advance. You've got to give them a chance to go away and actually look it up and talk to someone else if they want, so get proper legal advice if they really want to go that far, and then an opportunity to come back and question you over it.
Is it a wise thing to actually you step back and let your accountant or your lawyer do it? Because you could easily, as a layman, tick a wrong box.
Yeah, definitely. We're doing more and more agreements ourselves for a lot of our clients because they don't want that risk. They want the assurance that all the right clauses are in there. If you don't want to pay an accountant or lawyer, you can go to the Department of Labour. They've got an employment agreement on there, but you've got to make sure you tick the right boxes.
But see, that's the minefield. I mean, that to me is the danger zone, because it's just, you just tick the wrong box because you didn't totally understand or read properly. The phone rang.
Yeah, exactly, and that's one of the risks that we're seeing more and more of. So that's why a lot of clients say, look, yeah, you take that off for us. We'll go ahead and do the agreement. They're confident then we've got all the right clauses in there. And you know, your accountant knows exactly what the wording should be, because it's very difficult.
Whatever your accountant's going to charge you, Kerry, is going to be a hell of a lot less than a payout.
Oh, exactly, yeah, because some of the payouts sort of $5,000 to $10,000. So you know, a little bill for an agreement's pretty cheap in the long run.
So they're doing a campaign, IRD.
Yes, the recent tax announcements, you know, the changes for the future, so the provisional tax, removing the penalties in that. IRD are going to start a big advertising campaign, so they're going to be coming in the paper, TV, radio, directing everyone to a website. where you can go and look at some videos on what the proposed changes are and also how you can comment on them. They've put $600,000 behind this campaign because they know the importance of it. And basically, if you want the changes to be what they are, you need to get in there and voice them. If you do nothing and you're not happy with them, well, tough luck, basically. You've had a chance. This is your opportunity to get out there, understand them, and actually comment.
Right, so it's the old story of move now or don't open your mouth later.
Exactly, yeah. And these changes are quite good in the long run, especially, removing some penalties, rejigging the whole provisional tax to make it a bit easier in the long run. You need to comment if you really want them, and we think you should get out there doing it. Even if you just want to say, look, I agree with the changes, at least you've had a say, and this is good of IRD to actually get out there and put a big campaign in behind it.
So just to recap, where do you get this information from?
It's about to start, so IRD will have, in the paper there'll be a website that you go to, and on that website will be a whole pile of videos and also an opportunity to comment.
Got it, okay. Now, fringe benefit tax. Oh gosh.
Yeah, there's a few inquiries coming through about vehicles on a farm. A few clients said, "Oh, I've got a vehicle I've given to a staff member, such as a Holden Commodore or something like that. I don't have to worry about it, do I? Because it's a farm." It's not quite that easy. If you've got a vehicle that you give to a staff member and they can use it for personal use, or even if it's just available, it's a real terminology. You may have an FBT problem, and you may have to pay what they call the perks tax. So the first step is obviously to talk to your accountant and find out what vehicles could be subject to it. Like a single cab ute won't be because it's a work-related vehicle, but a Commodore or even potentially a double cab ute could be subject to this perks tax, and it's something that a lot of farmers don't think about.
Well, you wouldn't. And the deal is that, I assume, is that because it could be used to take the family into town.
Yep, then that would be subject to FBT. Okay. And it doesn't have to be used, it's just got to be available. So it could sit there 7 days a week, and if you've got no restrictions or prohibitions around it, then that is available and potentially subject to it.
So in their employment agreement that you or your lawyer has actually...
Yeah, that's one of the steps. There's also some other steps involved. There's quite a few little documents, and especially if you've got a company and you've got, say, the wife in there as a shareholder and she's got her own personal car, that's also an implication that you've got to think about. Because 9 times out of 10, she won't have a ute, she'll have some sort of a
she'll have
sedan or something like that.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And so that's another one that you've got to think about as well. And accountants up and down the country will be able to help you with what's required there.
So are we talking more here than just having a logbook for the first 3 months?
Definitely, yeah. The logbook is really if you want to claim sort of a percentage for business use. This is a lot more involved. You either make it fully available or you put some restrictions in place. But then you have the restrictions
and sign for.
Yep, and you've got to do some checks. So you've got to every so often go out and have a look and see whether that vehicle's been used or not. If you put a restriction in place, so it's quite involved.
You need to minute that anywhere?
You have to keep a note of it in a diary or something like that. Yes. So for example, we've got a special logbook we've designed for our clients, and they just go and write down the date, the time, and what the outcome was, and put that on file.
I'm sort of shuddering a bit. Because you're getting more and more compliance, aren't you?
You are, yes. And really FBT is one of those things that they should be getting rid of because most people don't pay it. There are some very clever ways around it that the High Court and other cases have come out and said if you do this then you don't have to pay it. The costs involved in IRD collect them are not really worth it in the long run.
Yeah, okay. But they are there in the meantime.
They are there, and we've got to work with what the law says. And as a employer, you've got to think about what you're doing for your staff and make sure you sort of have this covered because it could be one they could trip you up on.
So take-home message is really more compliance.
Yeah, talk to your accountant the moment you go to get a vehicle for yourself or even an employee. Talk to them first and find out what's involved and then go from there. And
as far as those employment contracts, I mean, that is... You don't mind doing those for people?
No, that's one of the things that we quite enjoy really because we know where they're protected.
And during your conversation with them, you'll be saying, are you supplying them firewood? Are you supplying them a vehicle that they can have access to?
Yeah, we've gone through all the list of things.
Are you giving them free meat?
Yeah, we go through a whole list of things that they could potentially be given a staff member and just making sure we've got all the bases covered before that staff member's even on the farm.
You guys are amazing. No wonder you do 40 hours a year straight research. Thank you very much indeed, Kerry. Obviously, the Winter Festival has been and gone as far as cricket is concerned, but we still did catch up with some of the people who are absolute characters, including a lady from up north. JJ, coming down from Wanganui, there must be a lot involved.
There is. There's a lot of planning. You've got to make sure you've got all the right gear, all the horses got all their covers, because you never know what the weather's going to be like down here. And yeah, a lot of planning goes into it, and especially when you've got to pack up. It depends how many horses you're taking, of course, but yeah, you've got to be well organised.
How do you pick which horses that you are going to bring down?
Well, you just know through the year what races there are and how they're going, and sometimes you don't know till the last minute if they're going well enough or not. But normally you make a plan, and you really do know for these big races what you've got for them.
And you've got to come across on the ferry, so you've got to get that booked, and it's all a bit of a to-do.
It is. We always end up going with Majestic over, and otherwise if we have one horse, I sometimes tow it the car and the float, but you've got to book everything, make sure everything's right, and if the weather's right, you've got to be prepared to stay on either side if it's rough, so yeah, it's a lot of planning.
You're going from Wanganui down to Christchurch, so a big difference.
It is a big trip. It is a really big trip. If I'm towing the horse, I do like to stop in Blenheim and give it a bit of a break, a bit of a halfway break, so they can get their head down, have a drink, just a bit of a rest. When they're going the whole way in the transport, it's a long trip and it is hard on them, but most of them get through it pretty well, as long as they're good travellers.
Do horses know about different tracks? Do they favour their own?
Well, they do. I think they have their pet tracks, really. A horse will always seem to go well on its home track, but saying that you can travel away and they'll have a good track that'll suit that horse as well.
So as far as training, you're full-time?
Full-time trainer. I pay partnership with my father, Evan, and it's really a bit of a family affair. My sister Claire, she rides in the morning before she goes to work as a dental nurse, and my sister Eve, she rides, and we've got 3 other helpers in the morning, and we're pretty busy.
And then, of course, you peter off towards the end of the day after you've sort of fed and watered and exercised.
Yeah, that's in the morning. We go back, and then we've got to bring them in and change them around at lunchtime, and you can never really go away. And then it's afternoon, starts up again, and it's brushing and bringing them in and all that same stuff, feeding again and get them ready for the night.
So you're a nutritionalist as well as somebody who works with the athletes?
I don't know about a nutritionist, but you've got to feed them right and make sure they've got all the right supplements and everything, so yeah.
And then there's NRM, of course, that's where they come in.
It is, NRM, great really.
And after the break, we're going to be talking to a dairy farmer who's become a horse trainer because there's more in it for him.
Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Maybe your family has been farming the land for 5 generations. Perhaps you have invented the next best thing in agriculture, or maybe something else. Whatever your story, if you're out on the land, we want to hear from you. Get in touch by emailing us at info@ontheland.co.nz.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
We're living on a planet facing almost insurmountable challenges. Challenges we have to face sooner rather than later. The world needs our energy. She needs our ideas, our passion. It's up to us to change things, make a positive change to the planet, to feed the world, to protect the future, to live well, to be the generation that will make a change. Join us.
Bruce, part-time dairy farmer or part-time horse trainer?
Part-time dairy farmer now, yeah.
It's an interesting mix, dairying and race horses.
Yeah, well, when I got into the race horses, there was plenty of money in dairy farming, so that enabled me to get into it. Now I think the race horses might be supplementing the dairy farm at the moment.
So you're from Southland. What sort of block have you got down there?
We've got about 1,000 acres of dairying.
And your team of horses?
Yeah, at the moment, we've got about 15 in work, and I've got a couple of staff looking after them at the moment while I'm here at Riccarton, and I've got a son that shemooks a farm for me.
First day of the Winter Carnival, and Southland did very well.
Yeah, it was really good actually. 5 of the 11, and I was lucky enough to get one of them, so yeah, pretty happy.
Bruce, how do you make your horses peak at the right time?
Got no idea, I'm not that good a trainer. I just keep taking them to the races till they win.
There must be more to it.
Oh yeah, you set your sights, I do, a couple of months out for a particular race, and yeah, aim to, just have your horse right for that particular race.
Bruce, you're enjoying it?
Oh, definitely, yeah, but yeah, it's a 7-day-a-week job though, which, yeah, it's not that great sometimes.
When you're picking riders, have you got your favourites?
Not really. Some of the horses I try to get an apprentice to get a claim, weight off the horse's back. Some horses you need a senior rider to handle that particular horse. But nah, just hopefully a good rider will ring me and want to ride.
So it is a bit of mix and match.
Yeah, it is actually, definitely.
Dennis, water, very important.
Absolutely vital, Rob, for farming, of course, and I'd say to farmers, do look after your water. And a lot of farmers don't realise what they're eligible for in terms of stock water. And a lot of irrigation main lines are pressurised, and troughs run off those for stock water. So the deal is that for stock water, you're allowed 10 cubic metres per day or 5 litres per second. Now the big trick is that it's going through a data logger, all the water you use from your irrigation well, going through a data logger if you've been compliant and put one on. Mm-hmm. So you start ticking up use of water at this time of the year when you might be pumping up your main lines for stock water. So effectively the figures are being ticked off. Now the thing that has to happen is that your data collector agent, in our case Datacom, you talk to them and they need to make the adjustment allowing you for your stock water, so that when the figure comes in front of ECAN, you're getting close to your annual consumption, that you don't run into the non-compliance or into all sort of abatement notices and run over the top. At least you've got 365 cubic metres there, 3,650 cubic metres there, which is allowable for stock water.
Because my understanding is a dairy cow will drink 40 litres of water a day.
Absolutely, or even more, greater quantities than that. A lactating cow, 30 gallons I think, which is obviously more than that. But a bank manager recently said to me that very soon water will be more valuable than land.
That's a pretty big comment, but
yes.
I guess you're probably heading that way, aren't you?
Well, if you think about some of that shingle country, up Tiparita, places like that, which is virtually growing hydroponic grass, take away the water, or create a shortage of water, and that land is not very productive at all. So you can see whether it will change over.
Now there's a farmer from South Canterbury that you want to talk about.
Absolutely. Colin Hurst has talked to farmers, obviously, and obviously a thinker, and has seen a need for a potentially commercial business, a new one, which is to do compliancing for farmers. So all the things that we've been asked to do, and I think I've identified something like 16 or 17 different compliances at the moment, and we are being pushed and bullied by government and by environmental agencies and so forth, as well as industry and the request for food safety and traceability. We're being pushed, and some terrible deadlines are coming up in front of us. And so farmers are starting to panic a little bit about things like farm environmental plans, things like overseer, all sorts of things coming along where if you're in a phosphate runoff area, and there's quite a few of those, you actually have to apply for a consent to carry on farming. Now that has to be done by the 1st of January. There is a bit of lag time for implementation, but certainly by the 1st of January you have to have both an environmental farm plan done and a consent application granted to carry on farming. Just what you're doing.
So this guy from South Canterbury, was he organising a company to
He's
do all that for you or something?
Well, he is organising a company to do that for you, and I believe he becomes sort of a shareholder and a cooperative type environment, which it would have to be, because individual farmers' requirements will be different between each other, so you really need to be in on the group. I'm not too sure how he's going to structure it, but
he hasn't got much time to get it structured.
Not at all, not at all. And you know, the demand is right there now. So I think that's a fantastic, innovative potential start to help farmers. And there are some templates out there. I know Foundation for Arable Research have been putting a lot together, templates for farmers to help them. But there is some subtle stuff that has to go on. And you know, you need to be able to navigate around that. And I think there's a great opening for it, and I congratulate them.
So things like fertiliser sampling.
Yes, well, there's always a big debate about where the core comes from and what the reading might be, because if you start going down to 150 millimetres, you're getting down into country, especially if you're not ploughing, if you're into minimum till and so forth, you're actually farming the surface. So at 75 millimetres, you're probably looking at a totally different profile on your fertility than what you are at 150. And so, you know, certainly the fertiliser companies have a vested interest in going deeper, where it's more diluted and telling you that you need a lot more. But in fact, if some of your crops are quite shallow rooting, the top 75 can be a totally different answer. And I would put that question to your fertiliser companies, you know, where do I need to be? Where am I farming? And at what inputs do I need to put in?
Now, you'll be very happy because apparently Fonterra have suddenly twigged about this.
Yeah, not so much Fonterra, is Landcorp, about the palm kernel.
Yes.
Yes. And about time too, and been lots of lobbying from grain farmers on that. And New Zealand imported 2 million tonnes of the product. And so really it has taken the place largely of grain, and obviously with the clearing of the rainforests and growing the palm kernel, it's not a nice thing internationally to be propagating that sort of behaviour. And so Landcorp have come to the party and said, no, our farms will not be using that product. And of course there's lots of good, cheap, high value grain out there in terms of high value in terms of feed value, sitting out there ready for farmers to pick up at pretty good prices. So, you know, it's good to see a start.
Fonterra actually has been voicing it a wee bit as well, haven't they?
Yes, they have. I don't know whether they've quite gone as far as saying, you know,
don't use it. They're
don't
saying
use it because
we don't think you should, perhaps.
Yes, that's right. I think that it's under the microscope. Yes, yeah. And so it could move in that direction very quickly.
New chemicals. Are we very quick to pick up new chemicals?
Well, Rob, I've been thinking about chemicals and what's coming out, and anything new on the market really might be potentially slightly more expensive than the old product, but you can rest assured that its profile in terms of efficacy, environmental and toxicity packages will be vastly superior to the old ones. And so I would ask farmers to think about it, read the labels, embrace it. I know the proprietors will be looking for a payback from the start.
Absolutely.
But a lot of them
research and development.
Absolutely. A lot of them are vastly superior on the beneficials, and if you can get your beneficials helping you farm, they're unpaid workers. So really look after those little beneficials that will come through, and perhaps give more mileage to the chemical. It won't get lost, almost an integrated pest management type thing. Yeah, think about it and look at those new chemicals, because they will be superior.
Well, we don't buy 20 or 30, 40-year-old cars as our main car.
No, we know how they have improved.
Yes, we do. Dennis, thank you very much indeed. Now, if you'd like to revisit Dennis's interview or any other part of the program, you can find us on our website, which is ontheland.co.nz. I'm Rob Cope-Williams. You've either been watching or you've just missed the program, but I will be back at the same time next week. Until then, bye now.